to the Doctor Who Marathon. I'm your host McEdam, and today we're going to be talking about the Torchwood episode, Captain America, the First Avenger. No, sorry. It's the Torchwood episode, To the Last Man, written by Helen Ryder and directed by Andy Goddard. This is the third episode of Series 2 and is a Toshiko-focused episode. And we learn a little bit more about Torchwood. In fact, this is the first time in the series that we actually get a flashback of a pre-Torchwood 3 team. So that's kind of interesting as well. And yeah, this is another very popular story. It seems like there's a trilogy of stories which were very good, very well handled, back to back. A lot of people like Sleeper, a lot of people like this story, and a lot of people like the next story as well, which we'll tackle on in terms of television. We will tackle about that, but it'll be a while before we get there. So we learn a bit about Toshiko in this episode and her relationship with a particular individual in this story, and we also learn about something about this. Chronologically, this means that this story can't be a year past Gwen joining the Torchwood team. It must be at least prior to her 1 year anniversary, because they state that something happens which you have to do at least once a year. So, and Gwen is obviously the character that we relate to, so she is the one that we have to be like, okay, what's this, what's happening, and ask all of these questions. So it establishes, at least from this point, Gwen hasn't been in Torchwood team for over a year. Don't know what that tells you about anything, honestly, but this story is a very popular story, and let's stop beating around the bush, shall we? Let's get on to the adventure. So our Torchwood episode, its pre-credit sequence, actually starts off with this group of investigators, and they're at this hospital during World War I. I believe they said it was 1918, and that in the hospitals, soldiers and the nurses have been seeing these strange primordial forms wandering around the hospital. And so these investigators come to look around, and at one point there seems to be a gateway that opens. We see Toshiko with this man, and he gets up and he tells these two individuals that he is at the bed right now. You need to pick me up now, so I am here today. You've got to take me out of bed there so that I can be here now and we can continue this loop. So these investigators then find the boy again in one of the beds in the hospital, and where they state, it's like, don't worry, come with us, we'll look after you. But who are you? He says, and this group of people, they reveal that they are Torchwood, which clicks into our pre-credit sequence. Great way, little opening of the team. It's like the first time we get to see this group. They don't have a prominent role. They're only in, I believe they're only in this episode, and they have a very small part. In fact, there's no real new footage until right at the very end of the story. It still mainly focuses on the present day. Speaking of the present day, we learn that in Torchwood, every year, they awaken this guy from hibernation, where they run some tests on him, they make sure that he's fit and healthy, and that he is destined to save everybody, to rescue everybody from some sort of disaster in the future. And him being there will connect him into 1918, and the timelines will sync again. But we never know when this will happen and what's going on. Clearly, because this is his only appearance in the Torchwood canon, this would be the event that takes place. And right off the bat, obviously, Gwen doesn't know him, but the rest of the Torchwood team do. Specifically, Toshiko, because we clearly see that she has some sort of relationship with him, unique compared to everyone else. She dresses nice for his arrival, and she writes it down on a calendar, stating that she's been looking forward to this day. She's the one that basically takes him to the bars and show him around. I love the rest of the Torchwood team's reaction. It's like, oh, that's sweet, that's lovely, as if like she's the most, because she's clearly the most innocent of all the Torchwood members. Now, it seems like her characterization has gone back a little bit, as this story takes her back as a much more innocent character, despite her, as we've seen, similar events have happened where she gets into a relationship and gets, at least in that situation, she gets used and she kind of toughens up in Greeks bearing gifts. But here, she's a lot more of an innocent persona, which kind of makes me feel like this story was originally written for Series 1. If I had to guess, it was supposed to take place before. Also as well, Toshika seems to have moved since her last appearance. Prior to this, she was seeming to live in some sort of house. Now she seems to live in some sort of bleak flat room, strangely enough. I don't know what that tells you about the canon of this story. And we slowly learn through, Gwen basically sticks with Jack and Yanto and the rest of the crew, and she's basically learning about this character and what's supposed to happen, as Jack basically explains. This person is destined to do something in the future, something that revolves around that hospital. We need to investigate the thing, but we keep doing this every year, and something is going to happen which will link him back into 1980, where time will become scrabbled. So to investigate, Gwen goes into the hospital where she sees that it's been demolished, which could trigger the emotional capabilities for this rift effect, connecting the two hospitals in the same hospital in the different time zones together. This makes Gwen kind of see ghosts as she meets a man clearly in World War I pyjama uniform with one leg, and doesn't seem to recognize, to see that she's there, while she just walks towards her and she starts panicking. The visuals here are very, I wouldn't say striking, but they build up on the atmosphere that the story is intended. It's a ghost story. It's a story about the history trying to unravel itself into the present. This is also the second time in Torchwood where timelines have gotten messed up and have interconnected with the past. And oddly enough, they both those stories revolve around the World Wars. In Captain Jack Harkness, it was World War II. Now it's World War I. On that note, it does kind of feel like been there, done that with this story. Like they have this haunted building, which has mentions of ghosts as there's a thing, and there's also this love relationship that actually takes the main focus. It's a lot like Captain Jack Harkness, the episode Captain Jack Harkness. The visuals, the similarities are absolutely striking, and I think it's too similar in my opinion, but it doesn't deserve the praise that it gets. Not to say that it's a bad story, but I think it's way too similar to Captain Jack Harkness and too early in terms of canon. Of course, these stories actually aired a year apart from each other, being as this is in season 2. And so, but in terms of canon, because the way I'm watching it, it does feel way too similar, and it does feel like I'm going, hold on, I've been here before, I've done these kind of plot lines before. But the story does have some very unique twists and turns to play onto the formula. So let's get on to the hospital scenes. As Gwen basically states, it's like, right, she basically explains the hospital's being demolished, could that be trigger it? And she explains that she's seen ghosts, and so the Torchwood team, specifically Gwen, Owen and Jack, they go into the hospital, which has been smashed down. Gwen goes on to talk to Owen. It's like, it can't be happening now. There's a mention that about this woman in armour around some strange and odd noise. That can't be here now, can it? But then Owen notices that there is a brick in the wall and there seems to be some sort of advertisement. On the advertisement there is a warrior woman and the sounds of traffic in the background as Owen points out the events that Tommy, the character that they got from 1980, Tommy his name is, whatever he does to save the world happens now. As Jack and Gwen witness some ghostly events. Now, in terms of directing and the performances, the bit where Gwen has an interaction with one of the ghosts is awesomely terrifying. I love the bit where Gwen is like, she's looking out at a scene in which this nurse is taking this man who's clearly ill on a chair into an office, and then she kind of walks out and goes into the corridor. Gwen kind of turns around as the background goes in focus, and then you just see the woman lean in like that from the side of the walk path. She calls out, "Hello? Hello?" And she slowly walks up to Gwen. Gwen is quiet because, you know, she shouldn't be able to see it. It seems to be remnants of the past and not real ghosts. And then she says, "I can see you." And Gwen like panics back and is like, "I don't mean to hurt you. I don't mean to panic you. I'm so sorry." And this woman's just screaming in her face. It's like, "You shouldn't be here. You shouldn't be here," until she vanishes. That is a brilliantly stunning visual and shows Andy Goddard's fantastic directing style when it comes to a much more realistic threat. Obviously, ghosts, you know, aren't real, but the feeling, the realist emotions that we get in that scene is absolutely well handled. And Andy Goddard was a perfect choice for directing that scene. But I will say that for the majority of the story, there's not real much of a visual style there. The story is kind of directed generically for the most part, with barring some few scenes regarding the ghosts. And so most scenes I feel like could have had a much more stronger impact. A little watered down by the fact that they are shot so generically in a sense. So let's get on to the heart of the story, and that is the relationship between Toshika and Tommy. As there's clear some sort of relationship going there, as Toshika takes him to the bar. They have a nice time playing pool. We get this really great scene in which he looks onto the news on the TV where it's stated that there's a war in Iran that's just kicked off, and Toshika is like, and Tommy have this discussion about war and how you know, it seems like there's always some sort of war. It's also revealed here that Tommy is a coward. He didn't want to fight in the war. He had no intentions of fighting the war, but he was basically forced to, and he's so glad in a sense that he got frozen by Torchwood, because Torchwood essentially saved him, and he is a coward, and he doesn't want to be this hero that most soldiers came out to be. He just wants to stay there and live his life with Toshika, as it clearly there's some sort of relationship happening there. Toshika then mentions something about like does Tommy had a boyfriend back in 1918, and then he is like, I did, but then the war broke out and war changes you, and I wasn't a very stable person. And then we get a scene and then they're on the bay, and Tommy kisses Toshika, and Toshika kind of shies out, showing that she's still not comfortable with the relationship. She's very new, she's very like her being in a relationship isn't a common occurrence for her. Again, this kind of goes against her characterization in Greeks Bearing Gifts, where she basically fell in love with a rebel-like character and had that personality not sprung upon her, but she did kind of get used to the whole relationship thing. And Also, as well, it's also been established that her and Owen are having some sort of relationship that will be kicked on into future episodes. In fact, we do get a lot of emotional baggage from previous episodes continuing here. Owen clearly clearly has an interest in Toshika in the sense that he looks out for her. There's a scene where they're investigating the hospital and Owen is like, I know how much Tommy cares for you. Just be careful because I don't want to see you be hurt. I know, we both know what's going to happen. He has to get sent back to 1918 where then you will be left without anybody and I'm here to look after you. I'm here, I want to look after you. I want to see you happy and I don't want to see you hurt. I don't want to see you damaged by these events, clearly showing that relationship. That aspect in this story really works because it plays with Toshika's character, and this is a Toshiko story. It just focuses on basically her relationships and how complicated relationships are when it comes to Torchwood. It also teases up for future episodes, very well handled. We also get some scenes of Yanto and Jack and their relationships. Although I don't think the scenes actually work well in the story and are kind of distracting in terms of the narrative, because it literally, apart from like one or two scenes, it doesn't have anything to do with evolve with this story, and it's clearly, again, set up for later stories to pull your emotional strings. But the characters do work off well each other. John Barrowman and Gareth David Lloyd are fantastic actors together, and the scene when they're discussing about how about Tommy and how all those soldiers were basically sent to their deaths for seemingly no reason, and Yanto is basically, it's like, he basically asks Jack, if you could go back to your home where you belong, would you? And Jack slowly kind of reveals that he doesn't feel like he belongs anywhere, but he knows going to his actual home, back in his actual time period, won't solve anything. He'd rather stay in Torchwood, where then the two men share a passionate kiss. Again, pushing their relationship forward, but has nothing really to do with the narrative here, and is kind of distracting in terms of plot, but it's well handled, it's well directed. I just wish that that scene actually played in a story which actually revolved around Yanto and Jack, because as for here, it does kind of feel more like set up for later episodes. But that's beside the point. As the events start kicking in, Jack basically realizes that the torture team only have, I believe it's like 12 hours until the rift starts opening completely, allowing Tommy to go back, allowing him for a short period of time left in modern day. The tortured team, I love the scene in which Tommy's looking at the rest of the tortured team, and he basically realizes that he doesn't really know most of them apart from Toshika. He basically offers like, right, what would you do? Most people, like during the war, before we go into battle and stuff, we would go drink, play cards, have a discussion about like our lives back at home. But we're not going to war. It's just me that's heading into this terrible event. You're all staying here, so I don't know what to do. And Toshika, because they have this canister, and Jack can only open it when the timeline is right, and so when it was right, it was open it, and Jack realizes that Toshika is actually part of this event as well, and he basically tells Toshika that she's got to be there with him, and basically explains what happened. Tommy will go back to his own time period, where he will basically forget all events that has ever happened to him since being taken by Torchwood back in 1918. But the problem is that when he reverts back, he will still have shell shock, and due to that, he will refuse to fight in the war. Because of that, he will be shot as a traitor to the state, and which horrifies Toshika, and basically, from her point of view, has to basically send Tommy to his death, and she doesn't know if she can do that. But Jack is like, we need him to go. So Toshika basically takes him to her flat after they had a passionate kiss previously in the episode, in which, you know, she kind of felt like she was, she didn't know about the whole relationship thing. But here they do actually sleep together. We don't actually see anything sexual. It literally he comes into her flat. They have a snog, and then it cuts to the next day when they're in bed together. And Tommy asks Toshika, it's like, what happens to me? You know something. I can see it in your face. And she basically lies to him, saying that he's sent into France, where he fights for his country and wins, but in doing so, he dies. And he kind of puts on a brave face. It's like, at least I died for my country. At least there's that. At least I died as a brave man and not as a coward. But when they get into the hospital the next day, where he wears his pajamas again, and Toshika's wearing her clothes from the start of the episode, he starts panicking. Jack gives him this device which will allow him to fix the timeline back in 1980, but it can only appear in 1918. And so he starts panicking. He's like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to go back into World War One. I'm going to panic. I don't want to. I want to stay here and live. Why can't I live? Why can't I stay with Toshika? And Toshika has to basically, she doesn't want to. You can clearly tell she doesn't want to, but she insists that he does it. And so we have that scene in which the Torchwood team from the 1918, they see Tommy, and Tommy is like, right, you see me in the bed, come and pick me up. I'll come in now, but you need to take me from there, blah, blah, blah. And then he gets back into World War One as the torture team take him away. In a really cool scene, like he's witnessing the events of him being taken away as the tortured leader in that timeline. He's kind of looking at our Tommy, and is kind of like looking at him as if to go, you know what to do, and pushes the younger Tommy out of the room as the older Tommy goes into the bed. But he seems to have forgotten what he needs the key for, and because of that, huge chunks of 1918 are appearing in Cardiff as the panic is appearing. I wished we had more detail on what that exactly intended. Like, from what we had, it just had a few blips on the scanner as with some sort of like earthquake. Whether like there were bombs being hit into Cardiff, or were like other like these giant portals, we don't know. And I think that was a very big missed opportunity to have a second assistant unit, Andy Goddard's directing, for a few scenes in which we see the effects of what 1918 and the modern day, how they clash together and what that really entails. Does that mean a bunch of people now teleporting through these events and got stuck in 1918, or some people in the past and are stuck in the future? We don't know. We actually, it never really goes into detail. But Owen comes up with this idea. He has a specific alien machine, and using Tommy's blood, they can psychic connect him to the past, where they can basically convince him to turn on the machine. Jack originally goes, but Toshika is like, I need to do it. And Jack is like, okay, you do it. And Toshika basically goes back in time and sends a mental projection to Tommy. And Tommy at this point has forgotten who she is, because he's now reverted back to his previous time zone. He's forgotten everything about Torchwood. Which then begs the question, is like, how is he supposed to know how the key worked anyway? Did he not use the key because he was terrified? Or was it just so happened that he forgot and had no idea what was in his hand? And Toshika basically calms us. It's like, relax, don't worry, it's going to be fine. All you need to do is tick the key. I'm someone you trust. Trust me. You only need to do is turn the key and everything will be okay. And he does it, and it's like, thank you. And then Toshika gets transported back mentally to modern day. The story then ends as Toshika is looking up through the pier, and Owen is basically like, you were the only one who could have done that because you are so strong. Maybe that's a reference to Out of Time when Owen couldn't let Diana go. It would be very nice if that was. However, I doubt it because they never name drop, and the scene plays more of Toshika's strengths than Owen. But in my head canon, I'd like to think that he is basically going to Toshika. It's like, you are the only one of the tortured team who is strong enough to give up a loved one like that. I have proven that to myself with Diana. And so we had a really great shot. Again, this story has a few great moments of directing, but it's not throughout the majority of the story. The majority of the story is directed pretty okay, but we do get some great scenes. Especially I love this one where Toshika basically walks off from Owen, and the camera keeps on like holding on to her as she walks away from Owen, like basically towards the cameras. The camera's like following her from in front of her, so it looks into her expressions, and you can just feel the pain, the sorrow she has, as well as her cheerfulness, as Owen is taking a caring attitude towards her. And obviously she kind of likes Owen, as previously stated in previous episodes, and that she's kind of happy by, after these events, Owen has shown that he does care for Toshika. Whether he cares about her enough that they could become a couple, we'll have to wait and see. But that's how the story ends. And there you go, that's Of the Last Man. Overall, it's a really great story. We have a great and emotional hook. It feels mainly self-contained, and it's a great story for Toshika and Tommy. I always love it when Torchwood introduce a new character that interacts with the Torchwood team, and the Torchwood team basically just have to figure out the story around them. Come to think about it, that's a lot of Torchwood episodes. Like, you have a single character, a new character who's usually human, and the Torchwood team basically have to work out the shenanigans around them. Never thought about it like that. Maybe they knew that the formula works very well. But I do feel like it was a good story that could have been a better story. The story does do very well with Toshika and Tommy. However, I felt like it could have been done further. We had the building blocks for a perfect story, but we've just been building a pretty good story, if that makes any sense. As well, I think mainly the majority of the story is directed pretty okayly, barring some few scenes which are really good and suspenseful, and that last shot with Toshika, that is a great way to end this story. So, Of the Last Man, pretty decent story. So join me next time when the Torchwood team fight their greatest monster, Mud! So join me next time for the novel Something in the Water. And I'll see you next time on the Doctor Who Marathon. Ta-ra!